The regular scheduled meeting of the County Board of Commissioners, August 2nd, 2021. If you will, would you join me in a moment of silence prayer? Amen. If you will, would you stand and pledge allegiance to the flag to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, as soon as I get the list, we'll start with public comments. Just a reminder, please direct all your comments to this board. You have 3 minutes. All right, Randy Poole.
Good morning. My name is Randy Brewer. I reside at 596 Jones Road, Pelham, North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to revisit the subject we had last meeting about the project. I think the board is going with redesigning the square. Speaking of the last question of board.
We have a policy, we generally do not engage.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I understand. I just want to make sure I don't step out of bounds here. There were a lot of positive impacts we didn't hear about, but a lot of negative impacts we did hear about at the last meeting, such as legal action we may be taking to come up with a decision when we come up from Raleigh. Also, negative impacts about the cost. One of the negative impacts I was thinking of, you can probably go within a 100-mile radius of this town to other counties, and you won't find a more attractive courthouse than we have. You won't find a more attractive court square than we have. So I'm kind of puzzled about what this board is trying to achieve by redesigning the square. I mean, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm sure there's nothing political about this project. So it's kind of baffles me, why do you want to mess up something you already got fixed? So that's one question I'd like to answer. Also, if I'm gonna come up here and complain about something, I'm also gonna come up with a solution in my mind. In my mind, what we need, one thing we can do to enhance the square, if that's what this board is really after, is we have what I consider a small monument to a great man in this county. And that was Mr. N.L. Dillon. Now, that monument is okay to some, but in my mind, it doesn't meet the requirements for this pioneering education we did this year. My proposal is we make a statue in the likeness of Mr. Dillon, we put that on what's going to square. Now, that would be a whole lot less money than what you propose to do now, but I think it would be a good thing to do. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next on our list is Herb Hickman. Is that correct? Herb?
Before I begin, I'd just like to make a comment that during the last meeting, I sat here for over 2 hours. And I listened to comments being made by concerned citizens and residents. So when I went home and I tried to come up with something to say, I didn't have the time. I've got comments, but I guarantee you over 3 minutes. Now, in the last meeting, some of the people spoke for 10, 15, 20 minutes. So what I'm saying is, I know for a fact that my comments are gonna be over 3 minutes. I just don't wanna get shut down. I'll go through them as fast as I can.
How much over 3 minutes do you think it's gonna be?
Probably, I'm thinking 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Because I've heard comments that the last meeting that long.
Yes, sir. I did allow one person who spoke for a group
Okay.
to have more than that.
Like I said, I will get through them as fast as I can. I'm a pretty fast reader. I just don't want to get shut off before I'm done.
Well, if I let you go 10 minutes, I've got to let everybody else go 10 minutes. That's my problem. And
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, we're happy to distribute, if the gentleman would leave a copy of his public comments, we're happy to distribute those to each member of the board, immediately after the meeting.
that's how we'll proceed, sir. You get 3 minutes and then you leave your copy with us. They will give the copies to each board member.
Okay. Yes, there was slavery in Africa. Warring African tribes were fighting for different reasons. Winning tribes took their captives and made them work to earn their freedom, but there were limits and boundaries associated with it. African slaves did not lose their status as human beings. Once their debt was paid, they were set free. Slaves in America were considered chattel or property, not people. They existed to be worked to death and to breed more slaves to be worked to death. In the 17th century, a Dutch shipload of African slaves landed in Jamestown, which various scholars have determined that that was the start of slavery in America. After the Revolutionary War, most northern colonies began to link slavery with oppression by the British and called for an end of slavery. Slavery was never widespread in the North. Between 1774 and 1804, all northern states abolished slavery. But it remained absolutely vital to the South as slaves needed to work the sugar cotton plantations. First half of the 19th century brought bitter and hostile debate about slavery. 1859, black slave insurrection exposed a growing grip over slavery. South reached the breaking point in 1860. Abraham Lincoln was elected president. In 3 months, 7 states seceded from the Union to form the Confederate States of America. 4 more states followed after the Civil War. The Confederate Constitution reads as follows. Our new government is founded upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race in his natural and normal condition. This our new government is the first in the history of the world, based upon the great physical, physiological, and moral truth. January 1, 1883, President Lincoln issued his proclamation that slaves were basically free then and forever. Slavery was the basis of white supremacy and control, which united whites in a common goal. They couldn't imagine the South without slavery. When it was threatened, Southern whites took up arms, slave owners or not, to defend their way of life. Slavery represented control and power. Those are the southern states and war monuments represented there. It's not about war heroes. White America wants to retain the power and control. These symbols are offensive to Black America because they remind us of a painful, unjust past. Before this meeting started, we all stood and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. The last sentence states, with liberty and justice for all. Displaying these Confederate statues and monuments and flag with their offensive and racist undertone will never bring America closer together. In closing, I'd like to say that the commission voted properly in November 2020, and they decided that the Confederate soldier monument in Court Square should be relocated. North Carolina Constitution General Statute 102.1 subsection C deals with this issue. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the extra time.
Thank you, sir.
And I will leave a copy.
Yes, sir, please leave a copy. And manager or.
Darren Hickman.
If you will, be sure to give us your name and address.
I'm sorry, my name is Darren Hickman, and I do live in Tampa.
And you may want to pull the mic down a little bit so you're speaking more into it.
Yes, I know, I'm short.
Well, I have the same problem.
Is this better?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sharon Hickman, and I also am a resident of Caswell County, since you've met my other half. Well, I'm the better half. These are my comments and our observations in response to the last Monday night meeting. Several members on the opposing side invoked God and country. Others commented that some Confederate soldiers perhaps were drafted or forced to serve. Then someone went way out in left field and commented that they did not like loud and offensive music that came from nearby cars. Now, let's get down to business. It was said that to move the Confederate statue, we would be dishonoring them. Let me be perfectly clear and concise. The South chose to succeed from the Union. They created their own country, complete with precedent, flag, and constitution. One who participated in a war against their own native country is considered a traitor. Treason. That's from Wikipedia, not from me. And there are other listings for what a treasonable act is. Racism seems to be openly revered and honored in the South. Not so much now, admittedly, but this was how it was set up. Laws were enacted to keep us in servitude. By law, restricted on voting laws, by law, where we lived, where we worked, and even how we got to work, and in some places who we married. All right, fast forward to today. Things have gotten better, but there's still much to do. Why are you still holding on to these antiquated reminders? Now, I'm a lady of a certain age. Don't ask me what it is. I know what racism feels like. I know what it tastes like. I know what it looks like. The white on signs, the colored signs, those are the reminders that I'm talking about. Now, you want me to feel sorry and sad for that Confederate soldier and the flag? Why should I? It was not done for us. He didn't die for us. They rewrote history books, omitted what they didn't like, and put in what they did. Whether it was the right thing or not, that's what was done. Hidden under Jim Crow laws and white sheets. A lot has changed since then, but now, if we don't keep paying attention, there are those who want it to come back. Well, we're not going to let that happen. We're never going to take our foot off. We're forever be vigilant on the paragraph that comes to them. You want me to honor your flag of the Confederate soldier? He did not die for me, he died to keep me enslaved. Less than a second-class citizen. When did you honor my ancestors? Where are they buried? We are supposed to be a progressive nation. Show us that you can learn from your mistakes. Stop honoring. Stop honoring the people who did that. If you want to keep honoring the soldier, put him where you can do so in peace. Private property, infected cemetery, go museum. Just don't expect me to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thomas Wright.
Come on, Tom, right? Yes, be a I'm here tonight to disapprove. Before we approve, you guys regularly names. Now, I can name that I was ready. I want those names. Not agree, I want to simple things with me. Now, I come here to talk to you and simple thing, understand what I'm saying. So when I run into you in a pass, and the whole door they know they know us. That's the people that hear, understand what you're saying. Some of them, when I give it to the commission, and with this into the management, they get changed. Whole story is around. None of this is what we're saying here. This moment, we get our food. Man, I it minutes. But when I hear it, I don't thought about it. And when you were so real, and I was like, the whole different story. I want to know where it's coming from. And I want to know if you got it out there, how you going to be the truth like that. You send me today from the 28th of November to the 28th of October. And you can put it like that, you're going to let it like that 2 or 3 weeks for people to read. Now, how are you going to change that to November 28th and get those same people to read and see that it's been changed back? Now, you put the story out there. We come in and tell you the story. You change the story and put it out there. And I'm here to tell you that we are the 19 regular members that we don't put out there. The whole people story and what I have in the past. If you don't, okay, I'm gonna do what I can do and live like that. I'm on my number to get there. You know what I mean? The other people coming here talking to you, you could be doing something like me. But I want you to now approve the people that are 19, 20, on the road to live in to figure out exactly what's going on.
Thank you. Charles Blackwood.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Charles Blackwood, and I reside at 490 Wall Street here in Yanceyville. In early 1865, as the Civil War continued to wage on, Abraham Lincoln in his second inaugural address made the following statements. Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bonds since 250 years of unrequited toil shall sink, And until every drop of blood drawn off the lash shall be paid by another drawn with a sword, as was said 3,000 years ago. So still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Yet, 156 years later, there are those amongst us who continue to exist in a time war, refusing to accept the fact that all men are created equal and are guaranteed inalienable rights. It pains me that so many of my fellow citizens will repeat the Pledge of Allegiance in which they pledge their loyalty to the flag of the United States of America, but yet by their actions disrespect the descendants of former slaves by advocating ideas and systems that are inconsistent with liberty and justice for all. So, in answer to the question, don't we have better things to spend the county's money on than to redesign the Yanceyville Public Square? My answer is a resounding no. No, we don't have better things to spend it on. Spending it on a project to redesign the square will at least partially atone for prior evils and prejudices perpetrated by the Confederate statute in its current location of prominence. This investment will also enhance opportunities for future economic development in the county. We respect the descendants of Confederate soldiers and understand their desire to recognize their heritage. Their dead join the thousands of Union soldiers who died on battlefields as the war was fought to preserve slavery. However, that tremendous loss of lives does not diminish the fact that slavery was a morally unacceptable institution. No, taking the statute down will not eliminate systemic racism, as that can only happen when people's minds and hearts are changed. However, it can start a healing process needed due to the negativity inspired by such a symbol that evokes thoughts of white supremacy. We can only hope and pray that the moral consciousness of your leadership will result in a decision to relocate all monuments and to redesign the public square. The relocation of monuments will not represent an erasing of history, but will place history in a more appropriate context. The future of our county should be made brighter as we preserve the past under the proper context and embrace a future that is more inclusive and reflects the history and values of all of its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ernestine Hamlet.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Ernestine Hamilton, and I am a citizen of Cass County. First of all, I would like to thank the Board of Commissioners for your vote on last week to continue moving forward with the redesigning of Town Square. And it is my hope that we can continue to move forward and fulfill our duties and our obligations morally and legally. Our motto, our county motto is preserving the past and embracing the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Clark. Excuse me. My name is Ed Clark, I'm from Danville, Virginia. I got 10 folks in North Carolina. I'm gonna lay the facts down. Has anybody in here ever heard of the Coleman 13th Amendment? Have you? This was a bill that they wanted to pass. It tells the people in the South of the states, if you will stay in the Union, you can keep your slaves.
wonder why that's never mentioned. And I wonder why Thomas Day is never mentioned as a black slave owner in Milton. If we're gonna tear one set of monuments down, let's tear them all, but let's not tear any of them. This is ridiculous. My great-great-grandfather wouldn't fool enough to march in the middle of a battlefield for the sake of a slave. This, and all the money you want to spend just to get rid of one monument? Come on. Joseph Stalin would be so pleased. It was never a march for equality. It was a march for supremacy. And if you can't see it, you never will. That monument deserves to stay there. It's been there that many years, and I don't buy all this holding hands and singing Kumbaya and trying to be one. It'll never happen. As I said, it's not a march for equality. It's a march for supremacy. And I don't buy all this together in this mumbo jumbo. Let the monument stay. It deserves to be there. It tells a story that a lot of people are scared. It tells a different story. It exposes Lincoln for what he really was. People better wake up, but it's getting just like the Soviet Union. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I have another name on here, but I cannot make it out. Is there anyone else that signed up to speak?
I'll take that opportunity. My name's Tony Lundley, Danville, Virginia. I family from this area.
Sir, hold on just a minute. Did you sign up to speak?
I did.
You didn't?
I did.
You did, okay. Did you do initials? I'm just trying to get your name down on this, so repeat your name again. Tony London. Okay. Just so I got your name. Thank you, sir. Continue, name. I'm sorry.
I'll say part of what I said the other night, just in case there's someone here that didn't catch it the other night. There was a vote in Virginia in April of 1861. And the vote was overwhelmingly for Virginia to stay in the Union. And at that point in time, North Carolina was going to follow Virginia to stay in the Union. Slavery or no, they decided to stay in the Union. I'll make that clear. A week later, Lincoln asked for 75,000 troops to march south through Virginia and through North Carolina. It was viewed as a highly unconstitutional, illegal act, and he asked Virginia and North Carolina for troops. Even though Virginia, with North Carolina following, was going to stay in the Union, they didn't think it was right for Lincoln to raise troops to march from South Carolina. Virginia had a second vote, a week to 10 days later, and they overwhelmingly voted to come out of the Union, not over slavery, but over the fact that there was going to be an illegal invasion. That soldier out front, that's not a soldier to somebody fighting for slavery. That's a soldier to someone defending the state, defending North Carolina. That's a soldier to a young man, could have been 16, 17 years old, who was asked by this state to fight to defend the state. And he answered the call of North Carolina. And I don't see how anybody can dishonor that. That's an honorable statute out front, and it has to be kept. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This time we'll close public comments. Go on to recognitions. The board members have recognitions this morning. Now we'll move to the agenda. We need approval of the agenda. Need a motion. So moved. We have a motion, need a second. We have a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? On the approval of the consent agenda, I will ask that we will remove the July 19th minutes until we figure out exactly what the issue is, Madam Clerk. We're gonna withhold that. That's okay with the board until we get it figured out. So we will, the consent agenda consists of June 7th, June 21st, meeting minutes and the audit contract. Need a motion to approve. So moved. We have a motion to approve. Need a second. Have a second. All in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? Now we're going to discussion items, Pelham Industrial Park covenants. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just, we spoke at the last meeting about the Pelham Industrial Park restricted covenants. I've included these in your agenda today, and I'm happy to run through and just highlight a couple of sections that, you know, the board may need to be aware of. The first section is section 2.04 definitions. Association shall mean and refer to the owners association created by and comprised of Caswell County, their successors and assigns, and any future owners of the property as acreage, sites, lots, sites or lots are sold pursuant to the bylaws. Bylaws shall mean the bylaws of the association initially adopted by Caswell County and all the amendments thereto. Commissioners, as of now, I've not been able to ascertain who are members of the association. We do know the landowners, and the bylaws are not readily available for us, so that's something we'll continue to work on. I wanted to make the board aware of that. If you'll move down the page to Article 3, permitted uses. Heavy and light manufacturing, uses office complex, small business development center, or uses primarily comprised of research activities, scientific laboratories, and compatible light manufacturing related thereto. Then I think we had a blank page. Assembly and testing of electronic components, devices, equipment, systems, and parts, public and quasi-public facilities, warehouse and wholesale distribution, any other uses ruled acceptable by the association. Here again, the association is not crystal clear as of now. The association in its sole and absolute discretion shall have the right to determine whether the use of any site or lot is a permitted use. Each owner shall obtain the consent of the association to its proposed use of its site or lot before commencing such use. I think it's interesting with the development we have occurring now in Danville with the casino that there is no mention of retail sales for this site, and probably rightly so, because it was deemed an industrial park at the time. But that's something the board may want to look at moving forward, i.e. a gas station could not locate on the site under these restricted covenants the way they currently are read. Section 5.02, plan approval required. All architectural and site plans are subject to review and approval by the association, and the association must grant approval of all plans and specifications in writing prior to the commencement of any construction. Plans shall incorporate elements required within Article 5. So as you read through the article, there's several things that are required. But here again, we talk about the association, and the association is not readily available and has not met in 7 years that I'm aware of. If you move further to section 5.13 subdivision, it speaks that no owner shall be able to split a parcel and create additional parcels except for Caswell County. So the proposal we had last week was for an individual or a group to buy 47 acres that they plan to make several different business units out of. Given that proposal, they could not have subdivided their own property according to the restrictive covenants. So I move on to Article 6, and it talks about eligibility for voting rights. Every owner of a lot shall be a member of the association. Membership shall be apparent to and may not be separated from ownership of a lot. Membership shall transfer upon the conveyance of a lot to the new owner, and the former owner shall cease to be a member upon the transfer of title. And you move on, there's two different types of memberships. There's a Class A and Class B. Class A memberships shall consist of all owners of a lot or lots. Owners shall be entitled to one vote for each acre of the property owned in the aggregate, regardless of the number of lots comprised by such acreage. Class B membership shall consist of Caswell County, which shall be entitled to 3 votes for each acre of property owned by it in the aggregate, regardless of the number of lots comprised by such acreage. Class B membership shall cease when fee simple title to all lots in the property has been conveyed by Caswell County to others. There's also a rule about the economic developer that I'd like the board to just take note of and read through at your discretion. There's also the restricted covenants speak to assessments that the board can make, or the association can make as they move through the process. So I guess these restricted covenants were made on the 4th day of September of 2002. In light of the development that the board has coming, potentially in that area of the county, I would suggest that the board look further into these restricted covenants, maybe consider splitting out certain parcels from the industrial park itself, but at the very least engage a development firm to help the board walk through the process. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the restricted covenants that you may have.
Questions from the board? Do you know offhand how many Class A members we have?
I know of 3 Class A members.
Comments?
Has any consideration given to raising the price for an industrial park?
No, it's advertised on the county website, or was on the previous county website, for what the board would consider. The way, and maybe Mr. Farrell's better suited to give you the procedure, but theoretically, an individual can make an offer. Any offer that the individual makes should probably come before the board, and then the board decides whether it's going to receive that offer. What the board could do is say, okay, we're not going to accept anything less than X amount. And then that would give us the authority to reject any offers below that amount, because we have to go through a upset bid process when anytime we're selling real property. So if somebody bids $10,000 an acre, we have to advertise it, wait the prescribed amount of time, let whomever that may wish to place a higher bid on that same parcel do so. and go through that process, and that may take weeks or months to go through. So here again, I would recommend to the board that the board speak to a development firm that can help the board walk through this process and probably better ascertain a adequate price for 1 acre of land. I think probably what the board has it listed on the website now, I think that's probably low.
And just to clarify, the board always has the discretion to accept or reject the offer. So while there might be an advertised price on the website or a minimum number, any offer would come to this board for consideration. So just because there's a number on a website or there's a number discussed or advertised, the board would have the discretion to accept or reject it. The bid process is one of the 3 federally recognized disposition methods for real property. That's the most common that the county has entertained over the years. It's also a straight auction process. But the idea is that you use a public process to generate the highest and best price for the property when the disposition is authorized by the board. So just so you know, you have the price flexibility, and it's up to the board ultimately what price you want to set. And maybe I misunderstood, but it sounds like what I heard. The covenants are fairly generic. My view of the covenants are they're a fairly generic, older set of restricted covenants for industrial park. There's certainly some updating that could be done should you want to do that. The way I understand the manager's recommendation is before perhaps you get into the nuts and bolts of the language of the covenant set, you have a vision of what you want to do with the park overall, right? What's the objective ultimately for the development, the build out of the park? And then you can use the covenants to help facilitate the ultimate plan that you have for the park. Perhaps this was just an opportunity that you took 20 years ago to designate some area that may be right for future development. And now perhaps you're seeing that come to fruition. And the idea is to figure out, well, really, what are the highest and best uses of this park? And then you can build the covenants revisions around what you see as that vision. And maybe I misunderstood, but that's the exercise. So again, I would recommend some revision to the covenants, but until you really know what you want to do out there, we would just essentially just be guessing with the language about what makes sense for permitted uses and that type of thing.
And I will share with you, when I spoke to the Providence Development Group, PD, the folks who made the offer for this $47,000 or 47 acres, they reiterated that they're still interested in the property as the board moves through this process, all or some of what they had originally proposed. So I just wanted to relay that to the board that they are still interested.
Further questions? Comment.
Whether we use a consultant, internal staff group, I think we should look closely at what it is that we want to do in 2021 and 2022 with the park. 2002 was a long time ago, things have changed. So I think we should look forward, look at refocus on our vision.
Would you want to form a committee to begin that process? Want our county manager to take the lead on that, but you probably want to need at least 1 or 2 commissioners.
Well, I don't know what would be the best use of our time, whether we would use the consultant or internal group. But I certainly think that the county manager and economic development and all one of them could kind of take the lead and guide us to push maybe the best approach.
Okay. All right, you understand? Okay. You'll do that and then come back to the board and give us some direction what might be the best, whether it's internal or getting a group to do that. Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll move on to the action item. All right, solid waste equipment, Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, you have in your agenda packet a breakdown of a couple options for solid waste. As we spoke about last time, to repair the loader and solid waste, it's going to cost about $35,000, give or take. There are signs of additional problems that would not be solved by this repair. There's some problems with the turntable. They're feeling the roughness in the turntable as it turns again on the piece of equipment. So that would not be solved by this repair. This repair would simply unseize the engine. I think the last time that occurred, we ended up paying about $31,000 to $32,000 for that repair. So having said that, that's an option, you know, just repairing the equipment outright. There is a sale price for a new Hyundai WH210 wheel loader. There's 2 lease options, which actually are 4 lease options. There's a standard lease, and then there's a lease with a $1 buyout at the end of the lease. I provided that information in your agenda packet. There's an extra warranty provision for about $10,000, which would as we move through ownership, if that's the way the board decides to go. There's also an additional option of purchasing a 2019 BE loader for $195,000. It's a log loader, and it's really, you're unable to move it around the yard, whereas the wheeled loaders are more easily moved when you need to move them. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have about the loader or the options that are available.
Questions?
Yes. First, that's one heck of a lot of money. Have we looked at options to buy used equipment? I spoke with a dealer in South Austin, Island Equipment. They indicated that we've given the specs what we were looking for. They had had something that would fit the bill. They could locate something that would be sufficient.
We looked at several different options as far as used equipment is concerned. The problem, and it's, AJ, the problem we've encountered when looking at used equipment is our equipment requires, number one, a certain reach. And a lot of the equipment that we looked at wasn't capable of the reach that we needed to be able to push the trash that's piled up on the pad back into the dumpster. Age has also been a problem with the used equipment we found, and just the overall general condition of the equipment has also been a problem.
How many hours in a given year do we put on that piece of equipment?
Anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500.
And is it fair to say that 10,000 hours of equipment or anything you could already have?
I mean, it just depends on your maintenance plan and the equipment and there are a lot of variables in that.
You go ahead. I'll have more questions. You can go ahead with your presentation. I'll have more questions.
So Mr. Fuqua is simply here to answer questions from the board. We provided the board with all the documentations with the different leasing options, with the specs on the equipment. All of that was included in your agenda packet. So we're happy to answer any questions you may have. But, you know, we've outlined the pricing on the equipment, and we're happy if the board decides, hey, we want you to go out and look for used pieces of equipment. We're happy to do that, fine to do that. But AJ, will you talk a little bit about how you looked and where you looked and what you found?
So I talked to multiple dealers, across North Carolina and some in Virginia. It's been hard to get some to contact me back. I did find a used piece of equipment, it was $120,000. It had a lot of electrical issues. It did have the reach, but if it's got a lot of issues already, and then we get it, then we're gonna be comes with a problem like we did with our current loader. We bought it used.
I try to be a good steward of tax money, and I think it would be pertinent and it's due diligence on their part to reach out to the dealer in South Austin. They assured me that they can locate whatever we need. Give them a shot. It's not going to hurt to try. If they can locate something that fit the bill, and we save that money, and we just one step here at the game. If they can't, then we take it up from there and go forward with looking at the new equipment.
We're happy to reach out to any organization that the board thinks may be helpful. But I'll reiterate that we operating without this does cause a lot of issues for our solid waste department. Currently, we've not been able to find one to lease at a price we think is an adequate price. I think they're looking at about $15,000 a month for a lease price on a piece of equipment like this. So trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, the solid waste director and Keith Fuqua, the other gentleman that works in our solid waste department, have took it upon themselves to push the trash up with the equipment we have currently, which is an extremely burdensome process, but that's what they've been doing in order to save the $15,000.
How much moving do you do with that load?
It would be very important to be able to move it for the cleanliness around it, move it to the brush pile, or if we need to go back to the backside of the pads, we can probably move it 2 or 3 times a week.
And I know we're looking at if we repaired it, 30,000. What, do you have any idea on the cost as far as turntable, how big a price tag that would carry if we repair this and then the turntable goes back on?
Probably close to $40,000 to $45,000 because the 40 to 45,000 machine out the doorway.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
A couple of comments.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, comment and a question. What do we decide on the fees for solid waste? I don't recall.
The fee for solid waste is $113 per hour.
Decrease what?
That was a dramatic increase
Okay.
from 60, I think it was from $60 to $113.
The comment, I've been on the board for several years. And I've heard quite a few people talk about, including commissioners, saving money by buying used stuff. Most of the used stuff we bought over the years I've been here has been junk. You put in 30 or 40,000 to repair, another 30 or 40,000 to repair, and it's the same old thing. What we've got to do, and what I hope this board at some point will begin doing, is plan ahead. We reduce the fee one year because we want to save people money. We want to save them $5, $10, $15. We never looked ahead to a sinking fund to replace equipment. And as soon as we finish up the budget, the equipment dies. So now we've got to start thinking ahead. And it may be that we may have to buy some new equipment, but we got to continue thinking not only for solid waste, but all of the departments. Equipment wears out. We ran into the same problem with air conditioning units and other things around the county.
But each year, we decide we want to save a few dollars, and that's just not the best way to go forward. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Ostrand.
I think I know the answer to this question. Turn on my microphone. But I asked it because we seem to be pursuing this for every capital expense. Does the ARA cover any of this or any opportunity there?
No, I'm not aware of any provision in the ARP that would allow us to buy this kind of equipment with those funds.
And I think I know your recommendation, but is it better for us to lease or buy the equipment straight out?
I think that's a board decision. Yeah, we're happy to pursue either option.
I mean, I just,
With the lease, you end up spending about $35,000 more over the course of the term of the lease and the interest and fees. But spending $229,000 straight out of fund balance, does two things. It does reduce fund balance we have available for other things. But the other thing it does is it supplants county tax dollars for what we consider an enterprise fund, which from an accounting standpoint is not a good practice. The enterprise fund should be self-sustaining, just like any water system fund. It should be self-sustaining. So the fees for solid waste should be able to run solid waste. We shouldn't have to take tax dollars.
yeah, I understand that part, and of course, I would expect solid waste to pay us back. Anyway, so I would suggest maybe we have you please look at this used equipment.
Sure.
See what's out there. Come back to the board, let us know, and then the board, we need to, I kind of agree with Commissioner Hall there. It's a lot of money, I know that. But I think many times buying used equipment is not, especially equipment like this, is not the best route to go. That may be what we end up having to do, whether we want to type of lease, if we decide to lease it, how long we want to lease it, and how long we want that maintenance agreement on. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment, for one time, solid waste had more money, we couldn't get it, we couldn't borrow it, so solid waste can take care of itself. Rather than have to take taxpayers' money. I mean, we had $1 million in solid waste.
Right.
So actually, I think, like the hall, we can go and use that, because we can't use solid waste.
Okay. All right, so we'll bring the information back to us. Thank you. Resolution, sorry. Okay.
What,
process. with the LGC, the Local Government Commission, to go through the process and that would allow us to issue more debt. Or maybe not more debt, but different debt. Because the money that we have now, or the money that we receive, would be used to pay off our current debt.
And share with the board the interest rate that we have. We are
So currently with the bids that came in, we do have one rate that came in at 0.8%.
I think he's asking what.
Yeah,
And we're currently paying now 3.325%. So, which would result in about, over a 6-year period, that would result in a savings of about $120,000 over the 6-year period. About $20,000.
any other questions, comments? If not, with pleasure of the board. Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the difference in the term of the loan?
No, there is no difference. We have about 6 years remaining in the term of the loan, an additional, the same 6 years.
Would not be additional.
No.
Pleasure of the board.
I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and again, this is not the borrowing resolution. This just authorizes moving the process forward. It'll be back before you. Additional resolutions required for the actual financing document.
And just as another, public hearing is required for this as well.
Roll call approval, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing refinance of detention center, and we have a second. No striker. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Number 11, solid waste ordinance amendment. Miller?
So commissioners, what you have in front of you is a solid waste, is an amendment to the solid waste ordinance. Basically what we've done is try to make the solid waste ordinance a little bit more enforceable than it was before. There was some confusion when we used the word citizen as to what citizens we were talking about, whether it was all citizens of North Carolina or whether it was just citizens of Castle County. So what we've done is went through and put Castle County citizen, Castle County resident instead, and Castle County Convenience Center, rather than just leaving it generic the way it was before. There are some other probably discussions that the board needs to have on fees and civil penalties. It's currently set at, the fees are set at $500 per occurrence. And there are other jurisdictions who have higher fees, they have higher civil penalties. But that's a discussion for people. That's a legislative decision, not a management decision.
Any questions, comments?
Yes. Mr. Miller, when we met with the district attorney and sheriff and the others, AJ Fuqua as well, one of the things discussed, and it was on the heels of having to pay $300,000 additional funds into the solid waste entity for volume of trash that ran up their tonnage and hauling rates. One thing that the district attorney focused on was increasing the penalties. I want to see the penalties increase for out-of-area resident, anybody that doesn't live in this county, plain and simple, shouldn't be dumping trash in our facilities, and our taxpayers have to cover that cost. Whatever kind of stiff penalties we can put, raise the fees, stick it to them, let the word get out, if we're not gonna take it. Our citizens are totally heavy enough bills as it is. We went from 60 to 113. Anything we can do to stop that burden being placed on our people, I'm all for it, and I would like to have input from the lawyer, what we legally can do to make it tough on these folks if they take advantage of Castle County.
Right, enforcement is the key, right? You can have whatever number of dollar amount of penalties that you want, but you gotta have some monitoring, you gotta have some enforcement, and there are various ways to do that. We can certainly build in substantial penalties for violation of the ordinance. I think it's a little tricky when you're calling out residents of different states because of equal protection clause, but that doesn't mean you can't have penalties for violation of the ordinance itself that would apply to folks that are coming into the county violating provisions. So we can certainly look at strengthening the penalty provisions as a deterrent. Enforcement's going to be the key. How you monitor who's coming in, who's bringing away, and being consistent about that enforcement, I think will be the key. But we can certainly look at adding some additional dollar amounts to the penalties.
Also, it was discussed in trying to put the wording into the ordinance where if someone dumped items in the dumpster and damaged it, that it would be easier to collect it. You can get a civil judgment against anybody, and it's not what the paper is written on. But if it can be worked into where it is part of the criminal conviction in court, thereby, since they have to pay restitution, you've got a whole lot better chance of the county collecting that money.
Yeah, yes, I think that there's in any county ordinance where you're looking at making it a criminal penalty for a violation, which it is generally misdemeanor versus a civil penalty, and what has more teeth, a criminal process or a civil process. There's certainly some advantages over using the district attorney and the power of the criminal court system to prosecute violations of local ordinances. And the restitution may be something that they can add on in the criminal process as well, that might not be available there. So, yeah, we can look at the division of penalties, both criminal and civil. If you'd like, they would like me to take a look at.
Yes, sir, I would.
We'll ask the county manager if he will bring a recommendation back to the board as far as the increase in the fee.
Absolutely.
Any change to the ordinance that we need to make, that we can make in order to do that. We still need to, most of the changes in here I see are just adding Castle or Castle County. The vast majority of those are the only change I see in it. So, Mr. Striker, you have a question? I'm done.
A question for the county attorney. How, if you have an out of state violator, what's the process, what's the procedure, how would you go about collecting that fine? What's the jurisdiction?
Right, so if a out-of-state citizen or out-of-state individual comes and dumps trash in Castle County, that's a violation of our ordinance, they would be subject to civil penalty, right? So just because they don't live here doesn't mean, because they came to Castle County and availed themselves of the benefits of using our facilities, we would have an action in Castle County, a civil penalty action against them, which is enforceable in civil court, not criminal court. So you bring a lawsuit, right? In the same way that you would enforce a civil penalty that wasn't paid against a local resident, you do the same thing. You would just be serving the process in whatever state the person comes from. You know, is it more difficult to locate, to get them to submit to the jurisdiction, to enforce, right? The penalty, should they not pay it if they're not resident? Sure it is. And that's why my overall point was the key in my mind is stopping folks using the facility in the first place, right? Monitoring, some way to enforce who's coming in. You know, an example is, you know, from a neighboring county and Chatham County, you gotta have a sticker on your car to enter their facilities, their recycling facilities. You don't have a sticker, you don't get it, right? You only get the sticker in your tax bill every year after you pay it, right? So you gotta have some way to stop it, I think, in the first instance. If you're trying to react it, which we can do, we can strengthen penalties, we can make it unattractive. It's an expense, you gotta file a lawsuit, you know, you gotta have to file a lawsuit, we gotta find the person wherever they are, we gotta sue them, we gotta get a judgment, and then they gotta have some means to satisfy the judgment. That's not a very efficient way to go about enforcing the casual person who may bring a bag of trash down out of the vehicle or whatever. So we can do it. I think we should look at all available means to strengthen the ordinance. But at the end of the day, in my view, the most effective way to limit the use, have some sort of monitoring to turn in what's coming in, stop that stream coming in. After the fact, it's expensive and challenging.
Does changing into a criminal offense changing?
I'm glad that the district attorney has been engaged in the process. The district attorney is the charging body, the only one that can bring the penalty, to enforce the criminal law after a charge is brought or levied by the sheriff's office would be the district attorney. If they're willing to get involved and prosecute these cases when found, I think that is, you know, that certainly does have a deterrent effect. Because the folks would be subject to criminal prosecution in North Carolina if they commit a crime in North Carolina, no matter where they live, just like any person coming to North Carolina would be, should they commit a crime.
So the changing to a criminal offense is stronger.
I think it would help, and you can do it either or. I don't know that you necessarily have to do exclusive, and maybe that's what we'll look at. It's having the ability to toggle the penalty depending on the circumstances, perhaps. Because again, the district attorney has plenty to do. It sounds like he's willing to get involved and prosecute some of these cases in some instances. But I wouldn't want to rely solely on the district attorney if the county separately believed there was a reason to pursue a civil action.
So you could have it staged or you have both.
Yeah, I think that's what we look at, trying to make the bring to bear the most significant penalties, criminal, civil, that we can in the circumstance. And to the extent that we can have some flexibility in that process, I think it's better. If the district attorney can't hold back for some reason, we still have the option of civil penalties, and then sort of, you know, vice versa.
And that's what you're looking at.
That's right. That was what I understood the direction was.
Thank you. Thank you.
And also, county manager, the way we operate now, just how we can beef up enforcement.
Well, there's several different methods.
And I didn't.
Yeah, I know, but I just want the board to start thinking a little bit about, there are several different methods we could use, but our enforcement right now, you know, currently we have 2 people working at some place. They can't be at 10 different sites. So our enforcement is only going to be as good as our operator. And our operators are running stores and working jobs. They don't always have the ability to be there and to stop and confront anybody that they see that they just suspect may be an out of county resident. So I think Mr. Farrell brought up a good point. Some jurisdictions use stickers, but you got to have somebody there with the stickers. A lot of jurisdictions use county-owned sites. So I'll say that will be one of the recommendations that the board start transitioning into county-owned sites. When we come back, we'll have several other options available for the board.
Thank you. All right, so we need, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as we move through the discussion, I think that it would be good at some point that we have a work session with the district attorney and with the sheriff. We hear a lot of things, but we don't hear it directly from them. It may not be worth a whole lot. I mean, I just put it out there that way. Many, they'll probably overburden and overload it too. The other issue is, maybe staff and even citizens can suggest some ways for monitoring. If I am, living in Virginia, in the border county, if I'm living in Virginia and I come over every Saturday, take grandma's garbage to the dump, I add Susan's garbage to the dump. Am I violating some law, some rule because of being a good family member? We need to consider these things, that we may have to go back to some kind of sticker or some kind of path. But we need to think things through as we move forward. All right, so we may want to begin to think about a work session. Absolutely. Good thing to do. Okay, we need.
Mr.
Yes.
We had a work session with the district attorney and the sheriff, county manager, solid waste, AJP board. These issues were talked about in there, and we were assured that the prosecutor's office and sheriff's department would keep their full cooperation in implementing enforcement of this ordinance once it was worded where they could enforce it properly. They're on board. We just need to be able to get it polished as it needs to be to hold up the court with fines that we can put into it to have the most effect on stopping this illegal dumping. And to Mr. Hall's point, the prosecutor said there's discretion in the law. I see where you're going with that, Mr. Hall, that someone was cleaning out their grandma's trash. All means we're not looking to try to nitpick and hit somebody that was actually dumping trash for a citizen of the county. But you've got reports coming in Cherry Grove that people are coming in from Alamance County. You've got them, some more that are coming in from Person, and you've got them in Pelham coming in from Virginia. That's adding a lot of costs on people that pay these taxes. And we need to do all we can to try to make sure we can stop it. And part of it was discussed that we will go into a public awareness campaign once this ordinance is completed, and let the people know that there will be folks watching. There will be a concerted effort to do more than just put it on paper.
Good, thank you. All right, we need to move on this ordinance amendment. Have a motion to approve the amendments to the solid waste ordinance.
Well, we're going to get the feedback from the attorney on the fees, the increase from the outside.
That we can do at a separate time. We don't have to do that when we do this. This is just dressed up that he has made.
You know, it may make sense just to incorporate all of the changes at one time. I see the changes that are proposed here, and I think that it will be worked into the ultimate draft. I don't believe that making these changes now are going to give you a leg up in enforcement, quite frankly, over and above what I think you'll see coming forward. So you could move forward if you'd like to do that, or you can vote on it as a package when it comes back. I don't see that you're going to have a significant enforcement problem between now and then if you want to hold, but that doesn't mean you have to.
Pleasure for.
You don't need a public hearing for the general police power ordinance. You will need ultimately, since you're missing a member today, if you approve it today, it's going to have to come back again because it's a general police power ordinance anyway. But you could take action today, assuming you got a majority vote, come back anytime in 100 days.
Well, if we're going to bring it back regardless, let's just hold off. We'll just hold off and bring the whole package back.
Happy to do that.
Yes, sir. You said the whole package. Tell me what we're talking about.
What I understood you wanted to see is the enforcement provision reworked at a minimum, to look at the penalties that are available to make sure that we've got the maximum enforcement permitted by law in a civil and criminal context. And perhaps if the district attorney, if he's going to be heavily involved, I think it would be worthwhile to ask the district attorney if he sees any issues with the language or any other provision that he would like strengthened, to give it the best chance in criminal court. So we could certainly reach out to the district attorney in this process and get some feedback there.
Well, here again, I think the board should have a work session with the district attorney and the sheriff. When you go back to this issue of subjective can mean anything. And to me, it means, in a sense, that the district attorney has the authority to discriminate if he feels or she feels like it's appropriate. The sheriff may or may not have the staff. This board needs to hear that directly from me, in my opinion. In terms of penalties and fees, if we get a recommendation on some penalties and fees, I want to have time to think it through. To say you're going to find somebody $500 and then just let's vote on it, that's not the way I want to go. $1,000, it sounds good at the time, but it may or may not work. It may not make good sense.
Okay, let's do this. Let's let our county manager and attorney work on these items. Bring those recommendations and we'll have a work session just on this item. That's it. That way we'll have time to talk about these. We'll hear from the district attorney.
And that's where you like the district attorney, the sheriff, the solid waste director.
Yes. Everybody here. And then we can discuss it, go over it. And then we can take time to look at those recommendations, think through them, and then maybe the following meeting, make some decisions. Is that suitable? Okay. That's what we'll do then. Very well. County manager's updates.
Mr. Chairman, I have one quick update for you. I just want to let the board know that we are moving forward with the salary study process. The consultant will meet with department heads on the 9th at 1 o'clock. After that, they will meet with individual employees at 3, and then again on the 10th at 1 and 3. So we are moving forward with that process. I just wanted to be aware that the board to be aware that we're moving into that stage.
Okay. All right, commissioner comments? Commissioner Ostriker, me?
Yes. Included in the agenda packet was the proposal for salary plans. Right.
Yeah, we have included that before.
I noticed in there that there's the compensation plan study comparison with other similar county jurisdictions, et cetera.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that comparisons that we understand the parameters of those comparisons. And why a particular group was chosen as relevant to the comparison. I don't that's part of the specification.
So when we move through this process in the budget.
Can you pick up camera?
Okay, I'm sorry. So when we move through this process in the budget, this is one of the things that I brought up that I thought was going to be important, and the board really never gave me direction on what criteria they wanted to see. So is there criteria that the board wants to use, i.e. like counties or surrounding counties? You know, you might have a like county in western North Carolina, the likelihood of an employee leaving here and working for that jurisdiction in Western North Carolina is not very likely. But an employee leaving here and going to Alabama, that's a lot more likely. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at if you're just going to pick certain jurisdictions. There's a lot of different theories and ways that you can look at that. And I'm happy to pass along to the consultants any recommendations the board may have. What I would not want to see is the consultants go through the process and then the board say, oh, well, that's the wrong set of criteria, you should do something different. If it's like counties, it's like counties. If it's surrounding counties, it's surrounding counties. If it's all counties in North Carolina, then it's all counties in North Carolina. But if you want to provide us with some guidance moving into this, we're happy to take that and pass it on, pass it along.
Well, the guidance I'm giving is that, I think that's what we're paying the consultant to do, to come up with what their experience, their expertise would suggest are proper comparables to use as you would select a real estate person to find the comparables for selling your home. I would suggest that looking at this board, I'm not sure anyone on this board would feel that they're a qualified expert in salary compensation at this point. But I would suggest that the people who've chosen to do this study are better equipped than we are. So what I'm suggesting is that we, as a very first step in this process, and maybe hear back from the consultant by next meeting, or certainly no more than a month, what their criteria for selecting counties are and what their recommendation would be.
Yes, sir.
The second part is part of what we asked you to do on this was to, as I recall, the time and grade aspect of the salary plan. I don't see that specifically mentioned in the contract. Is that just my misreading of it, or is it not there? No.
So we currently have a time and grade plan, the county does. So what the consultants have said is they would help us adapt whatever the recommendations are to our current time and grade salary.
Well, I just don't see that in the proposal. If you amend that proposal, make sure that that's a little.
I'll definitely speak with the consultant about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Day, any comments? Commissioner,
Yes, sir, I have something like Jack Point Road. It's got a junkyard there on the road. I just like it 4 or 5 hours every week. And I just rode down there myself to look at it. It's something that you find out that people should live in a clean environment. They pay tax and the things all through the store. Actually, both.
do you have the address on that? No,
I don't know.
but you probably can tell me which house.
It's on the turn back on the road.
Just relay that to county manager of our county planner.
Yes, sir.
Take it right now and see what's.
Mr. Chairman, we do have our health director with us this morning, who's preparing to give us a COVID-19 update in light of the Delta variant. If the board would like.
Yeah, just let's get to the commissioner comments and then we'll hear from her. Commissioner Hall.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commission, my comment has to do with the COVID variant. So I'll try to keep it short and on what I have to have to say. But I think that with the advent of Delta variant, North Carolina and Virginia, that we need to consider, county commission, we need to consider added precautions
for our employees and our citizens. Okay. Wanted to ask you too, did y'all have your meeting on the cycle, North Carolina cycle? Yes. The county manager. If you would just give the board a quick update on that, just so.
Sure, we had a meeting on cycle C coming through and using Castle and Yanceyville specifically as one of the stops. We had numerous departments represented. Commissioner Hall was a part of the group. And we spoke about the way that we wanted to approach vendors at the food vendors at the site. We discussed a lot of signage and things like that that would be along the routes. So we discussed a lot of different components of that day at the meeting, and we'll have future meetings as it gets closer. Some of the signage is already, we've already started working on this.
How many cycles do you think we'll have come through, roughly?
I don't know. I haven't contacted the representative as yet. If they're gonna make this the full ride, we're gonna be looking at 1,000 to 1,500 cycles. Now, that's the variable that would change that. If they make it an offshoot ride, like before, we're gonna be looking at 300 or 400 cycles. That was one of the things. There was a lot of discussion about preparing for that. And that was one of the questions that the officers of the EMS and everybody else asked. And so we'll try to get those answers in the next week or so.
Okay, thank you.
Can you refresh the dates of it?
October 5, 4th,
Okay.
this is Tuesday. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dickinson. No further comments, any announcements, upcoming events? Just remind the board that the Arts Council is still having their, I forgot what they call it, second Saturday, is that correct? From 10 to 2, if you get a chance to come up, they have several, of course, businesses open and Mall Gatewood exhibits open. And I came up the last time, walked around, just remind you of that.
First Friday.
Oh, first Friday.
First Friday.
Yes.
This Friday.
This Friday.
Also, certainly the hotel, 25th of September.
All right. No other announcements or events. We need a motion to go in closed session. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ms. Eastwood. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's have it quickly. See the moments in.
It's been a while since you guys have heard from me. I've maybe forgotten, out of sight, out of mind. Just a quick update, because we've had a little bit of a lull, but now over the last 2 weeks, our cases are starting to uptick. It's a marked uptick in what we've been seeing. Since last Friday, we've had 37 cases come in. It's not as high as it was back during the peak between January and March, but it is an area of concern for us. I just kind of wanted to give you an update on what's going on as far as the mitigation strategies that we have implemented, that we're working with the state on. As far as testing, we are still working with an outside vendor to do testing. This is a vendor that was provided to us by the state, which is OptumServe. They have a location at the health department. We moved them inside because through the winter and in the spring, weather was a problem for them, and they were very unreliable and not open more than they were open, which presented a problem for people who need to be tested. So we have moved them inside our building, and so far that's working out a lot better. They have also added a rapid test to their services that they provide. We also had a testing site at the Pelham Community Center. That has since closed, and the reason is because we thought the state contract was ending in June, and that was the information that we gave the Pelham Community Center, and they began to plan things that were going on during the day. And so they needed their facility. But we really appreciate them allowing us to use the building for as long as we did. And we are talking about the possibility with our numbers going up that we may need to open another site somewhere and looking at possibilities for that. As far as contact tracing, we also continue to use an outside vendor for that that's provided to us by the state. And so a lot of times people ask questions about contact tracing, and our staff are not doing that in-house. We are contracted out through Community Care of North Carolina. We do have access to their portal, so we can review information, but we may not readily have numbers and facts about certain cases available to us when people ask questions. A lot of the questions that we're getting asked right now are about the number of cases that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And that's where this contact tracing comes in. Those are questions that CCNC is asking. We get that information from them, but it takes a little bit of time and there may be a delay in the information that if we were doing it ourselves, we would have that more readily available. As far as vaccination, we have individuals, 9,328 who have at least one dose of the vaccine. That's 41% of our population. And then 8,546 are fully vaccinated. That's about 38%. When we're looking at our numbers, and this is according to the state epidemiologist last week, when we look at our numbers, the state public health lab is sequencing virus specimens. About 80% of them last week were Delta. That was expected to go up and to reach 100% this week or next week. And then they were saying that about 99% of the cases were unvaccinated individuals. So there's only about a 1% rate right now in North Carolina of vaccine breakthrough. We have had a couple of cases in Castle County, but most of our cases are unvaccinated individuals. So we continue to vaccinate. North Village is continuing to vaccinate. Castle County Medical Center is continuing their vaccination efforts. The health department will be participating in the summer cash card program through the state, where we will offer a $25 cash card to anyone who receives their first dose of vaccine during the month of August at one of our clinics. We will also give a $25 cash card to anyone who drives someone to get their first dose of vaccine. So just encourage you all and our citizens to pay attention to when we're doing these clinics. We post that on our website. We also post it on our Facebook page. We'll be participating in the American Legion's Ride for Colby Richmond, which is this coming Saturday. We'll be there giving out vaccine. We also plan to be at the courthouse on the 11th during court day to give vaccine. And then we have our normally scheduled vaccine clinics. Aside from that, what citizens can do, because we are considered a red county now, is to reconsider masking indoors, whether you're vaccinated or not. And then just to continue to practice the 3 Ws. One thing that we've noticed is that respiratory illnesses have increased overall since we've been unmasking, RSV in particular, which is particularly hard on babies and young children. So continuing to practice that social distancing and washing your hands, practicing hand hygiene is really important. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Hoffman, which one of these tests are the most accurate?
The PCR test continues to be the gold standard for testing, and that is usually sent out to a lab. The rapid test that is being done at the testing site is not a PCR. The antigen test is really only accurate when someone has symptoms. And so while people do administer the rapid test on a screening basis, it really is only effective when someone has symptoms. So PCR continues to be our gold standard.
When you say rapid, that's instantaneous, you get the results back then.
Right, so there's a couple of different things, and people use this term loosely. So when we talk about rapid, we're talking about the antigen test, which is in about 15 minutes. However, there are some providers who have purchased the equipment and are able to do a PCR in-house, and they can turn those results around in a couple of hours, whereas sending it off to a lab takes a couple of days. So when you are going to be tested, these are questions you can ask. If they are doing a PCR test in-house or whether it's an antigen test. And that helps you know the reliability of the results.
And how about antibody tests? So someone would know if they've already had this COVID and not want to get the vaccine.
So I know LabCorp is running the antibody test. Anyone who donates blood, it's being done automatically on them to see if they have the antibodies. Aside from that, talk with your practitioner and they can test you.
Any other questions?
I know this is an unfair question, and I'll give you the pass on the answer, but you say 38% of the county residents you vaccinate.
We have been vaccinated in the state of North Carolina. So even if, I don't know. The way that we get our information is through the statewide COVID vaccine management system. And so anyone who is vaccinated in any site in North Carolina feeds into that system. Where we miss information is when people go across the border and are vaccinated in Virginia. And we have no way of that reporting back to the state. But as far as many vaccines as the health department has personally given, I have no idea. But we have vaccinated not only Castle residents, but residents from Virginia and from other counties as well.
And about how many people that you, our health department vaccinated?
I have no idea. I'd have to go back and count forms to find that out because we put everything into that state system.
I mean, I said it was an unfair question, so I actually will withdraw.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Are there any plans to offer the antibody tests through the testing setup that you have at the health department?
No, but the health department is a LabCorp lab. And so we could do it through our LabCorp. We haven't checked in to make sure that it's covered under our contract and what the cost would be to the patient, because I believe that is a cost to the patient. But we do draw blood for LabCorp, and so we would be able to submit that specimen.
Thank you. Is that up there? This time we need a motion to go in closed session, consult with the attorney and court retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged. NCGS 143-318, period 11, parentheses A, parentheses 3. We have a motion. Need a second. And a second. All those in favor, aye. Now set closed session. We'll take a 10-minute recess. We now sit back in open session.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I forgot the rules at the beginning of the meeting. I just have a conflict of management discussion of fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. I just wanted to provide this.
Okay, have anything for open session? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to a comment that was made prior to the health director.